Hey there, everybody. Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with this week's Stocks to Watch market overview. Actually, I should say market overview with the few earnings stocks to watch, but there will be plenty of earnings stocks to keep an eye on this week. It's a big, heavy week with a very broad array of companies reporting. I just want to wish everybody a happy Sunday, happy Easter, happy Passover. Hope you're having a good weekend. Very terrible news coming out of Sri Lanka. That could maybe impact the markets. Very, very sad. I don't know, man. I don't even know what to say about stuff like that. It's just so disheartening. All right. So anyway, let's take a look at last week's list of stocks to watch for the pro members and how they performed, and really not any big significant movers throughout the week. Uh, and that's kind of indicative of what we saw in the overall markets in general. We're kind of just chopping around as we, get deeper into earnings season. We'll see how that impacts the overall markets. But I do have a few concerns out there. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's just take a look real quick at the economic calendar. Don't have a whole lot of economic data but there is a little bit happening here. I mean, we've got new home sales, weekly jobless claims, durable goods orders, and stuff like that. And then we've got GDP for quarter one, so that could be interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Consumer sentiment as well. But the big story this week will be earnings, and I've got a few earnings that I'm paying particularly close attention to. But there are a lot of companies that are reporting that could impact certain sectors, um, and I think could have some pretty maybe volatile moves. One in mind is Snap. I think maybe that could have some volatility off their earnings report, but we'll have to see how it all plays out. And we have, like I said, a broad array of industries being represented. We've got, Grangers, we've got Caterpillar, we've got Intel, Amazon, UPS, Boeing. I mean, there's definitely a lot of big names this week that could give us an idea of which direction this market is heading in the near term. So we'll have to see how it plays out. Let's talk about, let's see, actually, let's take a look at the individual sectors. IBB, so, pretty concerning because this is one that I actually liked because it seemed pretty constructive. It was really in a kind of a consolidation mode within a channel here. And we broke down below this area of potential price support, right? On pretty good volume. And, that was, like I said, was one of the sectors that I thought was actually looking pretty constructive, and that's rolled over. And along with healthcare, we'll take a look at that in a second. And then IWM is another concern to me, right? It's been trying to get above this 200-day moving average. You've got a potential making of a double top here, and we are testing the 50-day as support. We've kind of broken through this little short-term trend line here. That is a little bit concerning to me. The IWM, small caps. And then transportation has been a very impressive space. We had a reverse head and shoulders pattern. We got above the 200-day, consolidated, broke out a little bit, but we are right back at an area of potential price resistance where we could see a double top. So a little concerning there in IYT. We've got a lot of airlines reporting this week. Like I said, UPS. So we'll see how those earnings reports impact that space. QQQs, right? We did break above this little short-term trend line here, but again, where are we at? We're at an area for what? A potential double top. So a little concerning there. SMH, we broke through the 110 resistance, hit new all-time highs, but we are extended. And now I think maybe what we would like, or what I'd like to see, is a pullback to this area that we broke through and then be able to hold it as support. So everything, I guess the way I'm feeling about things is there's nothing wrong with being in cash and being patient. Right? Sitting on your hands, I mean, you could be a day trader, doesn't mean you have to trade every day. You can sit on your hands. Cash is a viable position, and I think we have potentially a bigger risk to the downside than we do to the upside. At least that's how I'm feeling right now, just looking at the charts, right? So S&P 500 also looking at a potential double top scenario as we try to test those all-time highs. It just looks like the markets are losing some steam, and if earnings disappoint, if guidance disappoints, then we could see a pullback. The question is, how big of a pullback could that be? Nobody knows. We'll find out. TVIX and TZA, if we do get the markets rolling over, TVIX, look for potential volatility to come back into the market. Short-term trading opportunity, play it size appropriate. Don't get overly aggressive, and if you play it, make sure you scale within the same day. And if you're going to hold it overnight, make sure that you understand the risks of holding over a triple levered volatility index. TZA, same thing, right? Small caps, if small caps do roll over, do break down, TZA likely going to get a nice, or provide a nice trading opportunity. And TZA is starting to curl up here, testing the underside of the 50-day moving average. So keep an eye on TZA if IWM really does collapse. XAR, aerospace defense, we've got Lockheed Martin, Boeing, I think General Dynamics. We've got several of them that are reporting this week. It's in a very interesting spot. It is above the 200-day moving average. You just had the 50 cross above the 200-day. We're looking for a trend line break. We'll see what happens this week, but it is a sector I am keeping a close eye on. There are a couple of names within the space that, one that I have as a holding, and then another couple of names that I'd like to potentially jump into if aerospace and defense can break through that trend line with some conviction. Energy, mentioned it as being a space that I think is under-owned, and I do like the sector. I am looking for a breakout, but we are starting to see, it looks like maybe we're tiring out a little bit here. We'll see. We've got a couple of big names reporting on Friday, and then we've got a couple of names reporting throughout the week. We'll see how that impacts the energy space. XLF popped right up into this trend line, this area of price resistance, and what do we have? Potentially a double top, right? XLI Industrials, a lot of the industrial names have had pretty big moves already, and we are sitting at this trend line as potential resistance, and we've got potential price support resistance right around 80 or so. Let's see what happens with industrials. XLV Healthcare just getting absolutely smashed. A lot of people talking about potential value plays in the space, and that could be true, but we could be heading back down here to retest these lows, right? Double bottom test. So I would be, if you're looking to get into that space, I would be dipping the toe. I would not be going all in at this particular point in time. Consumer discretionary, we took out the double top, but we are a bit extended on the daily time frame. XOP, oil exploration, we continue to consolidate, and then retail also in consolidation mode. So look, it's going to be a big week for earnings, and the real hot space has been IPOs, and I think probably that maybe cools off this week. with earnings taking center stage. So let me go over here and take. We'll start pulling up the stocks that are on my radar for next week on the earnings calendar. Ones that I'm going to be paying fairly close attention to. RMBS is one that I happen to like. Now, it's actually had a pretty decent move into its earnings report. We're at an area of potential price resistance. $12, I think, could act as resistance. But, if they have a good report, a good guide, and this thing pulls back to around 11 or so, maybe even 10.50, the 50-day moving average, could be an interesting spot to take this as a swing or long-term hold consideration, depending upon what they have to say in their earnings transcript and their guidance moving forward. But I kind of like this one as a potential swing in the 1050 area. We've got a golden cross that is just occurring. We've got the 50-day crossing above the 200-day moving average. It's a little bit thicker of a stock, not super thick, but a little bit thicker of a stock, 101 million shares in the float. I think worth keeping an eye on this one for potential swing entry, provided a good earnings report. LMT, Lockheed Martin, big thick stock, just broke over the 200-day moving average, consolidated a little bit, grinding higher now. This is kind of moved into its earnings report. They report this week. And really, I'm interested to see how Lockheed, I think they're one of the first aerospace defense contractors to report. Let me just make sure here. Yeah, they report on Tuesday before the open. You've got Boeing and General Dynamics reporting, and Northrop Grumman all reporting on Wednesday. So Lockheed Martin could set the tone. And really kind of what I'm looking at is some sympathy plays there. MAXR is one that I currently hold. This is a long-term turnaround story type play. This could have a reverse head and shoulders pattern developing here. And then Katos, which is one that I've traded in and out of, and I still have a very tiny piece in Katos in one of my accounts, but I would like to maybe add or get back into Katos. Now, actually, stochastics are curling down. If this thing were to pull back into the $12 area, that's where I would actually really like it a lot. But it is testing the 200-day as potential support and also potential price support around this $14 area. So maybe I could start to take a little starter position with the intent to add if it were to get down into the $12 range, and we would be testing this trend line here as potential support. So that's really why I'm kind of watching LMT. And my father used to work for Lockheed Martin, so I just have a keen interest in that stock. All right, so moving on. Sirius Satellite Radio. I know it's not sexy. I know. 2.2 billion shares in the float. Pretty thick stock. They merged with or bought Pandora, actually, right? It's flirting with the $6 holla. I have actually been watching this for a while and looking, 550, I think, is a pretty good area to dip the toe on this thing. It's acted as support several times. It acted as resistance back here. And I think it's kind of interesting here in the $6 range. Now, if they report good earnings, good guidance, gives some color on how Pandora is moving along, maybe this thing gets some action. If it pulls back to that 550 area, I think I'm going to park a little capital there. I think regardless of what the market does, as long as they don't have any really bad news through their earnings report, I think this thing at the very least can hold up pretty well. So I don't know. I'm looking at it, looking to maybe start a long-term hold or swing position in Sirius somewhere around 550. And if it breaks, I wouldn't chase Sirius. If it report earnings and it pops up to $7, I certainly wouldn't buy it there. but I think it's worth having on the radar. Twitter, another thick stock, great looking daily setup, right? What I'm looking at is the fact that it broke this trend line here. It's got a potential flat top breakout over 35, let's call it 35.50, 36 bucks. You break out over that, you got a nice flat top breakout. You've got this little flag pattern, right? Real tight consolidation here, just as it broke over the 200-day moving average. So it's got an interesting look. You're potentially going to get a golden cross if that 50 can take out the 200-day. So it's worth keeping an eye on it. Maybe for a swing, maybe for a day trading opportunity. We'll see. They report Tuesday before the open. Cleveland Cliffs. So the CEO I think is pretty interesting guy. But this thing is at an area of potential price support, $9, right? So it's pulled back, heading into their earnings. Their earnings are Thursday before the open. It just had the golden cross, 50 crossed above the 200-day. We pulled back below the 200-day to this area of potential price support. I think this might have been earnings back here, where it had that nice big spike. Maybe it does the same thing. Maybe we're stair-stepping higher. Could be a high risk take ahead of the earnings. If this thing breaks this 9.17 or $9 support, potentially maybe we pull back and test 8.50 down to about 8.15 or so, where that trend line is, or $8, right? And maybe that's an area to take it for a bounce play, right? Higher risk, had taken it into earnings, but if it pulls back to that area of support, I may just do that. I may take a little lotto piece into earnings. And then the last one that I've got on this list, RRC, Range Resources, another one that could be coming down and testing an area of price support for a bounce, somewhere around 9.30, 9.50, $9, right? Came back down here, tested it as support. Now, it is below the 50-day, below the 200-day. But if these guys can manage to put together a decent earnings report with a good guide, could see a pretty decent bounce in Range Resources. So worth keeping an eye on that. Let's take a look real quick at T2108 and T2107, T2106. Let's look at those real quick. T2108. All right, we're starting to pull back a little bit here, which actually I think is probably a good thing. T2107, just kind of in real tight consolidation mode. This is the amount of stocks over their 200-day and over their 40-day. And, we get up into near 70 or above. That is when things are overdone. And if we get below 20, things are overdone to the downside, right? So right now we're just kind of fiddle in the middle, waiting to see, I think, what earnings are going to tell us. So T2106, McClellan Oscillator, we are not seeing any extreme fear. We're not seeing any really extreme euphoria. We're just kind of fiddle in the middle. So this could be a defining week to let us know which direction the near term will be. Tesla, we got Microsoft. We got so many big names reporting this week. It's going to be a very interesting week. And like I said, it could be a week where you just sit on your hands. You don't need to feel as though you have to be trading every single day. And if you do decide to trade, just make sure you know what your time frame is and have a plan. Know what the risk reward is, where you're willing to take the loss, or where you're looking to lock in some gains. Make sure you know what your plan is before jumping into anything. And that's really it. I've got a list of stocks to watch for the pro members. and I'll be getting that out to you very shortly here. But be careful out there. Do not chase. Make sure you have a plan, and good luck trading. I'll see you all next week.